Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this session, I'd like to talk about something that's local to Australia, I guess, but covering in a broader sense the international use of Western real estate as devices for international money laundering and tax avoidance. So it sort of comes under that wider banner now. In every Western country, the price of real estate has, whether it be rent or mortgages or house prices, whatever you like, has gone ahead at 3 times the rate of wage growth. In fact, more than 3 times the rate of wage growth. So even if we look at double incomes, two people on the average income, the price of rent and real estate is still increased at just shy of double the rate of a dual income family, let alone a single income family. So that just illustrates just how far prices have gone ahead. And again, as I've mentioned many times now, in 1970, if you rented an apartment, so two-bed apartment, it would take up 20% of your income, your cash, take-home income after tax. Whereas today, that same apartment would take up 60% of your income. So again, illustrating just how much how inflationary it's been. Now, a lot of this has been mass immigration and so on. But just as importantly has been that the wealthy class, if you like, and also international money launderers have all run to Western real estate as to get good investment appreciation returns, launder money, and just as importantly to avoid tax. So I just want to talk about that in Australia. Now, Australia's got something that when you buy an investment property, you have the ability to use something that's referred to in Australia as negative gearing. That's an Australian term. Now, what it means, and there are other places in the world that have not dissimilar sort of things, but in Australia, what it means is, and I'll do the simple version here, that if you've got an investment property, an apartment or something, you're renting it out, and you collect $90 a week in rent. So you collect $90 a week in rent, but your repayments to the bank for the investment property are $100 a week. So you've got a difference of $10 here. $100 you have to pay to the bank, but $90 you collect for rent. So you got that $10. So what the government says, well, that $10, if you have another source of income, like a job or you've got a business or something like that, if you have another source of income, we'll let you deduct that difference, the difference in what you have to pay the bank, and we'll let you deduct that difference from any tax you owe the government. So if you owe income tax of $10 a week, then you pay no tax at all, because you've got that $10 shortfall in your your investment property finances. You got that $10 short, which you can then deduct from, so you don't pay any tax at all. Now, that's fine, but for people who can, they can adjust their income. They're the insiders, the company directors, there's a small elite, sort of say one in every 500 people, approximately that, or maybe say 1 in every 350 people. They can control. They've either got long-term employment that goes for 20-year contracts or job for life, or they can adjust their income, or they can rewrite their employment contract on the fly. The amount of executives in business, the bigger multinational firms or the bigger firms, where if their performance bonus looks like it's not going to get up, they're not going to meet the performance targets, they can just on the fly arbitrarily change the performance targets to make sure that they do get the bonus. So if the performance target is how many new customers they get, for example, if they get 1,000 new customers, then they get the big bucks bonus. But they're looking at the halfway down along the year, thinking, shit, we're not going to make those that 1,000 customer target, so we'll just have to change the performance bonus to something else. So such as how many phone calls we get, or anything there. They'll just look at any KPI and say, well, that KPI is doing well, let's make the performance bonus based on that. So they can rewrite their bonus contracts and employment contracts and income contracts and so on. So anyway, people that have that capacity, a long-term controllable, stable income, long-term monopolies, whatever, and they have that capacity and power, if you like, just to rewrite their employment contracts, they're in a luxurious position because they can invest heavily in real estate. And investment real estate, apartments, or even commercial real estate for that matter, but primarily it's residential real estate. So they can invest heavily in that, and they've got so much control over their income, its longevity, how much they make, and under the circumstance under which it's paid, that they can fine tune there. So they can have big property portfolios that have shortfalls of $10,000, for example. They have shortfalls, so there's a difference between what they have to pay the bank and the rent. They have shortfalls of $10,000 a week, but they can simply increase their income to where the taxation they would pay equals $10,000 a week. But then they don't pay any tax because they've got the shortfall in the property investment, which completely writes off the income tax they would pay. So they have this huge property portfolio, increasing in value all the time. And they've got this large income where they pay no income tax whatsoever. So they're in a sweet spot. There's not many people have that sort of power to structure their income and have that sort of reliability of income. But for those who do, they can own vast property portfolios, and they do. They can have property portfolios of 50, 100, 200 houses. So that's not what this negative gearing was meant for. It's meant for people that have one, maybe two investment properties. It's meant for them, or meant for, say, builders, property developer type people that are building apartments and building, new estates, new housing estates, things like that. So it was never meant for this a professional investment class, tax avoidance class, tax minimization class, to wash their money, which is effectively what they're doing. They're not having to suffer market forces at all because they can adjust their income, they can keep their income, they've got a level of control that everyone else doesn't have. So it's not a level playing field at all. Now, since the cheap money and low interest rates and so on, this is, of course, in turn also contributed to an increase in shareholding. So the shareholding and the property owning class have got fantastically rich over the last 25 years, where everyone else has got quite a bit poorer. As I say, if you 20% of your income used to go on rent, now it's 60% plus going on rent, then you're poorer. Whereas the property class, the people who can adjust their income and have employment longevity and these sorts of things, they don't suffer any of those consequences and don't have to suffer any of the economic realities that are being inflicted on others. So you've got that class of people, of which politicians play a huge part in that. And, I think I've mentioned in Western politician terms, Western politicians, 30 years ago, well, certainly in 1970, their income was from their salary as politicians. Today, less than 50% of their income comes from being, as a politician. Most of their income, in some cases, vast, 90% of it comes from real estate investment, which puts them right in the pockets of the big investment firms and the banks and so on, which leads to further corruption of purpose. But then you've also got on the other side of it, offshore people, particularly the Chinese, but also the Indians, Russian mafia, that sort of stuff, coming to the West, and Australia's no different, coming to the West and buying up lots of property, not directly, although they'll buy some directly, but they'll create these dummy front companies. And they'll also use nominees. So all the Chinese that are here in, for example, Australia, they're people they can control, people they can use. They will get them to go and buy property. So you get the illiterate peasant floor cleaner on $30,000 a year will have a $10 million, $15 million property portfolio. He's being, or maybe not that much, but a substantial property portfolio. And I've seen this firsthand, so I know what goes on. and they'll use that nominee to own the property. So the Communist Party general, head goon in China, he doesn't own this directly himself. He owns it again, owns 200, 300, 400 properties, all through nominees, front companies, dummy companies, and so on. But in doing this, he gets access to the Australian tax offset system, the negative gearing that I mentioned earlier. So he can bring out his nominees, bring out his goons, through labour hire, front company, and all sorts of things. Bring people out, set them up with jobs, and make sure that they don't pay any tax either. And this is on top of businesses that then have offshore loans that make sure they don't pay tax, and other workers that are installed in the investment properties, dishwashers and burger flippers and that sort of thing, installed so that they don't pay tax because part of their income is packaged up with the rent and food and so on. So it's a massive system of property ownership where they get the benefit of all the appreciation of the property, and they're able to invest and wash and launder illicit money, have bolt holes if they need them to escape the wrath of a change in sentiment back in China and so on. But they can launder their money, realise the huge returns on real estate, and don't pay any tax in the process. So given all that, there's a need, a screaming need to look at this tax, this negative gearing, and to limit it in some way, so they can reduce the amount of gearing, because it's 100% so far at the moment. So if you've got a shortfall of $10 between what you pay the bank and the rent you collect, that whole $10 can be used to offset against your income tax that you would pay on other sources of income. So their options are to limit that and say, well, it's not going to be 100% write-off, it's only going to be 75% or something like that. Or they can do something like you can only own a maximum of 3 properties, for example, instead of the hundreds of fucking properties that people are owning at the moment. As one sort of quite wealthy guy, he had quite a successful business. He was probably a little bit lucky. He had a chain of shops that were bought out by one of the big chains, big international chains, and they paid, I think, several times what it was really worth. And so he did very well out of that. And I wouldn't rate him as a particularly bright guy. I mean, he just sort of, a lot of it was luck, but he decided to invest in property, and he said, look, for all his years, he'd been in business for 30 years and so on. And he said, I made more money in 5 years just from owning property, not doing anything, just passively sitting back. And I made more money in 5 years than I did in the previous 30 combined. So just how much money he was talking numbers, and there was a massive return. He more, something like close on tripled his money in 5 years or 6 years. So anyway, this is the point being, or as he was illustrating it, the real estate investment in the West has become a massive money maker for people that produce and create and deliver and make nothing. They just have the capital to do this, and also the facility, of course, to not pay tax. So they need the government needs to reduce either the amount of money that people can claim. It's at 100% write-off against your taxable income. Maybe it's a lesser amount, 75%, whatever. Or they can limit the amount of properties you can own. Also, there needs to be sort of rigorous clamp down on use of nominees as property ownership, which particularly affects the Chinese and Indians, who are scamming the system on a grand scale here, by the way. So, and all across the West. So, but is the government being altruistic? Are they wanting to reduce the price of real estate for all those hard done by people that are struggling on low and fixed incomes? Well, they may talk about wanting to help those people, but that's not the issue. But the primary issue is tax. They're looking for areas of increasing the tax revenues. and this is an area where they can do it. They've also got the option of, say, taxing the family home. If you hand it on as an inheritance, that's being considered as a possibility of tax. Or if you own your home outright, then you have to pay a higher property tax. There are other things that are being considered. Some of them quite wild, I think, and they're not going to get up and won't work. But addressing this negative gearing is an issue. And even if they stop the offshore buying of real estate, even if they can do that successfully and stop those people from negative gearing, we'll see the price of residential real estate level off and hopefully come down. And this would I think drastically change things. But as politicians are now so heavily invested in real estate, I can't imagine they'd want that. So their emphasis is going to be on keeping prices high but increasing taxes. I think that's where they'll go. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.